What's going on? Matt Savoca here from Awesemo.com, bringing you the Week 15 Monday Night Football FanDuel top plays. This is Minnesota versus Chicago, a NFC North matchup. Should be a good one here. Minnesota favored by 6.5 points with a 44.5 point total. On most weeks, that doesn't sound all that exciting. A 44.5 point total in Week 15 of 2021, that's actually pretty exciting here. So honestly, I think this could be a really good matchup. We got a lot to dig into here, but before we get into it, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel so that you always know when we're going live. You guys know what to do. And if you could give me, Matt Savoca, a follow on Twitter at Draftaholic, that's always much appreciated as well. We'd also like to thank our presenting sponsor, No House Advantage. You see the ad at the bottom of the screen there. No House Advantage is offering player props contests for all the major sports for real cash. Go ahead and download it from the App Store, from Google Play. Go to nohouseadvantage.com, and when you sign up, use promo code Awesemo to get a first match deposit bonus of up to $25. All right, guys, on the screen here above me, you see numbers 10 through 6 of my top plays. Starting at number 10, Damiere Byrd quietly outproducing the other wide receivers in the Chicago receiving core over the last few weeks. We don't know if that's going to hold up, but it's worth noting he's in the optimal lineup 23% of the time. At number 9 is Adam Thielen at 30%, and that's really a hedge, right? Because if he's in after being out for 2 weeks with an ankle injury, he definitely is in the optimal lineup more than 30% of the time. But if he's out, he's in the optimal lineup 0% of the time. So we're kind of hedging at this point. There is a chance that he plays. He's a game time decision. I'm kind of leaning towards out at this point, but I don't know anything more than you guys do. I'm just trying to read the tea leaves and read the beat writers as well. He is in the optimal lineup currently around 30% of the time. Number 8 is Greg Joseph, the kicker for the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, you can start kickers who are 6.5 point favorites in a game that has a 44.5 point total. Sure, go ahead and do it. Number 7 is Cole Kmet, tight end for the Chicago Bears. We'd like him more if he wasn't getting taken out in the red zone and at the goal line for Jimmy Graham. But hey, he's having a pretty good season here. And speaking of pretty good season, number 6 is Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is a really solid pick, or turning into one, for the Chicago Bears. In his second season here, he's already led the NFL in target share twice. But that doesn't mean he makes it into the top 5 this week. Who does? Let's watch him find out. At number 5, it's quarterback Kirk Cousins. Yeah, we know what Kirk Cousins is in this Minnesota Vikings offense. He's at 19.7 fantasy points per game this season. Last year, he was at 20.0 fantasy points per game this season. So honestly, a median projection of 17.0 is pretty conservative, in my opinion. He's getting over 25 FanDuel points 35% of the time in our simulations, and he's the optimal MVP play, as we often see for quarterbacks, over 9% of the time. Minnesota is creeping up in PFF's offensive rankings. They're now top 12, 11th best in PFF's overall offensive grades, and they're playing against Chicago's 28th best defense via defensive grades there. So I think Kirk Cousins can absolutely have a huge game. You know what they want to do on the ground with Dalvin Cook, but that doesn't preclude Cousins from having a big game against a depleted secondary in Chicago. At number 4, it's Justin Jefferson, who's looking like the top wide receiver option in this single game contest. And you're not surprised there. Jefferson has followed up his amazing rookie season with a sensational sophomore year this year. He has had double-digit fantasy points in every single game this season except for one. In fact, he's had 6 receptions or a touchdown or both in 85% of his starts. That's just unbelievable consistency for a player like Jefferson. Usually we see much more volatility from the wide receiver position. The only volatility we see with Jefferson is usually in the positive direction, when he's getting ceiling games like he does in 26% of our simulations, where he scores over 25 fantasy points. Yes, he's a wide receiver. In a third of our sims, he's scoring under 10 fantasy points, but I think that median projection of 14.5, even at that 14.5K salary, looks really, really appealing for Jefferson. You know the ceiling is 30 fantasy points. He had that just 2 weeks ago. I really think that he's a fantastic MVP option, especially in tournaments. He's the optimal MVP over 12% of the time. Number 3, it's David Montgomery, and honestly, I was a little nervous seeing him ranked this highly, but then I looked at some of his recent stat lines and I understand how we're getting to him this often. Honestly, with David Montgomery, it comes down to, do you really want to play a starting running back on a team that is underdogs by nearly a touchdown in a middling total game? Now, in a single game slate, sure, you'll take the touches, the guaranteed volume all the time, but we have actually seen some volatility in his carries. He had 10 carries last week. That's very different from 21 carries in week 13. The big thing I'm seeing here, and the most important thing, is the target share has really spiked over the last 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, he's seen 16 targets, and 16 targets in a 2-week span is the most Montgomery has ever seen in any 2-week span of his entire career. So even if the game script gets negative and they're passing trying to come back in some sort of blowout, I still think Montgomery is highly involved in the receiving game. That's why he's getting over 25 fantasy points in nearly 24% of our simulations. Yeah, the floor is definitely there. In a quarter of our sims, he's getting under 10 fantasy points, but at 15.2 at a median projection, the optimal MVP over 12% of the time, and in the optimal lineup 55% of the time, David Montgomery is a really solid play at a fairly high but reasonable $12,500 salary. At number 2, it's Justin Fields, and no doubt about it, the Chicago Bears passing attack is not strong. They're the 24th best offense via PFF's offensive grades, but Minnesota is nothing special. They just had to get rid of one of their cornerbacks because of a verbal altercation that happened in practice this week. That doesn't look good, especially when you're considering they were just league average in most defensive metrics anyway coming into this game. Now, Justin Fields has had his share of rookie struggles. He's outside the top 30 quarterbacks in most advanced metrics like EPA, total QBR, true passer rating, and unfortunately, fantasy points per game. But on a single game slate against a defense that we're not really scared of in Minnesota, a 17.1 median projection is nothing to scoff at, especially at Fields' pretty decent 14,000 salary here this week. He's getting over 25 fantasy points in 29% of our simulations. You know the floor is there as well because he's a quarterback. He's under 10 in just 19.4% of our simulations. Even as an underdog here, and even with the struggles he's had this season, he's still showing up as an optimal MVP play nearly 12% of the time, and is in the optimal lineup 56% of the time. Doesn't quite come in at number 1, but pretty solid numbers here for Justin Fields. Before I reveal my final play, my number 1 play for this FanDuel Monday Night Football slate, just want to remind you guys, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel so that you always know when we're going live. You guys know what to do. And if you could give me, Matt Savoca, a follow on Twitter at Draftaholic, that's always much appreciated as well. We'd also like to thank our presenting sponsor, No House Advantage. Get in there today. Use promo code Awesemo for a first match deposit bonus of up to $25. And finally, guys, if you want, go ahead and comment below. Let me know which of these were your favorite picks. Maybe some of your least favorite picks. I always like to hear what you guys are thinking. All right, guys, let's get to that number 1 play this week. Number 1, it's Dalvin Cook. And yeah, you can play Dalvin Cook in a game where the Vikings are favored by nearly a touchdown and the total is decently high. Again, 11th ranked offense versus the 28th ranked defense. That looks pretty great for Dalvin Cook. And when he's been on the field, we've seen the same elusive breakaway runner that we've always known. He's number 2 in the NFL in breakaway run rate. That's ability to turn a rush into 10 yards or more. And in juke rate, evaded tackles per touch, he's top 20 in the league as well. So we know he's able to break tackles. He's able to get out of situations where most runners would easily go down. And that's how you get to games like he had last week, where he had 27 carries and 3 targets and turned that into 222 yards from scrimmage, 30 plus fantasy points. That's absolutely in the range of outcomes here for Dalvin Cook this week as well. He's getting over 25 fantasy points in 50.5% of our simulations, and in only 15%, he's getting under 10 fantasy points. So the floor is there, the ceiling is there, and yes, the salary is high at 15K. But look at that median projection, nearly 21 fantasy points, rivaling the quarterbacks this week. Dalvin Cook comes in easily as the number 1 play in the optimal lineup 75% of the time. Right, that's gonna do it for this edition of the Week 15 FanDuel Monday Night Football Contenders video. If you're looking for the DraftKings version, go ahead and look on the channel here. It's around here somewhere. We will be back on Thursday with the Thursday Night Football edition of this video. Until then, I'm Matt Savoca from Awesemo.com. We will talk to you guys next time.